You know what's been going on. All right, you had the two stories, good news. Now I'm going to shift into another aspect of the horrible rise of fascism in this country, run by Christian fascists. I want to quote from Popular Information, Jed Legham's website at substack.com. I hope you've gone there. Popular Information at substack.com. Substack.com has become a place where there's all sorts of writing by anyone who wants to put a piece up there, I guess. I'm not exactly sure how it works, but I think that's how it works. Anyway, Jed Legham, who we have been quoting on this podcast now for the better part of a year, on Monday, he reported that the Manatee County School District in Florida instructed teachers there to make their classroom libraries inaccessible to students. Classroom libraries. Or, if they didn't do that, the teachers would risk felony prosecution, thanks to, if thanks is the right word, to this incipient Nazi who is the governor of the state, Ron DeSantis. Now, that directive from the Manatee County School District was issued as part of an effort to comply with these new laws and regulations that were ordered by the Nazi governor, Ron DeSantis, and carried out by his Christian fascist associates in the in the Florida legislature. And all of this shit is based on the sick idea that teachers are using books to groom or indoctrinate students. Jesus God. Now, Judd Legham, Judd and his associate, Rebecca Crosby, who does a lot of writing, they both do, at his site. They point out that across the country, school districts are removing books with LGBTQ characters and themes from school libraries, taking them out. Remember Bradbury's novel Fahrenheit 451 about the burning of books? Remember what the Hitlerians did and the Soviet communists did and the Chi-Coms? It's here. It's happening here, now, this minute. And now, a high-ranking Christian fascist legislator in North Dakota is proposing the inevitable next step, and that is banning books from public libraries. Can you believe this is happening? It doesn't matter if you believe it or I believe it. It is happening. Now, the legislation in North Dakota is sponsored by the North Dakota House Majority Leader, Mike LaFleur, a Christian Nazi. And his legislation would, quote, prohibit libraries from maintaining sexually explicit books, end quote. What is a sexually explicit book? Well, as defined by this Christian terrorist legislation, it's defined as a book that contains, quote, a visual depiction of anything on a list of 12 items. This list from Mike LaFleur also includes concepts that are not necessarily associated with sexually explicit behavior. What will those concepts be? Well, sexual identity. Oh, no. And gender identity. Oh, no. So, okay, what does a visual depiction of gender identity look like? Well, the Christian savage Mike LaFleur in North Dakota does not define the term of gender identity. Because it exists within the interior workings of an individual human being. There is an exception, though, for books with, quote, serious artistic significance. Those books are okay. I guess a depiction of the statue David, for example. The nude David. Maybe that has serious artistic significance to these Christian terrorists, but serious artistic significance is another term that is left undefined. Serious artistic significance to whom? I mean, some yahoo who lives in Mississippi or North Dakota or Maine may look at a rendition of a nude human body and lose his bladder. Just, oh no, get that out of my sight. So how do you determine serious artistic significance, huh? Now, librarians in North Dakota, the newest profession that is under attack by these filthy bastards from the Christian right. Librarians in North Dakota argue that this legislation would require them to remove most books with LGBTQ characters. A public librarian in Bismarck, North Dakota, I'm not going to give her a name, told the Associated Press that her library would be required to remove a children's book with 2 hamsters on the cover because the 2 hamsters are both male and they get married at the end of the book. Hamsters getting married. Oh, God forbid. Saints preserve us. Call the Pope. Now, under the legislation proposed by the Christian fascist Mike LaFleur in North Dakota, under that legislation, the book would be considered pornography because the book involves, hold your breath, gender identity. Oh, my God. And the legislation provided by this Christian terrorist in North Dakota provides that librarians that make prohibited materials available, even if nobody can give complete definitions of what those prohibited materials might be, but they would face, quote, up to 30 days in prison and a $1,500 fine. And this librarian from Bismarck, whose name I won't say, says the bill and companion legislation introduced in the North Dakota Senate, quote, promotes censorship and book bans, and the legislation has been drafted with vague and open-ended language, which leaves the door open for unintended consequences, end quote. And the Senate version of the sick bastard's bill from the House, this Christian Nazi Mike LaFleur, the Senate version would also prohibit books with written descriptions of, quote, sexually explicit topics. Ooh. What would a sexually explicit topic include? Would it include birth? You can't get more sexually explicit on a number of levels than birth. Would it only be human birth? I mean, it's North Dakota, for God's sake. They have cows out there, right, on ranches. What about depictions of a calf being born? That is sexually explicit. Well, let's leave the calves out of this. Okay. So human beings. If a discussion of human reproduction is part of a biology class in a public school in North Dakota, will that now be eliminated? Because is there anything more sexually explicit than the reproduction of human beings? The quick answer, no. The longer answer, hell no. So what are you going to do now, Mr. Christian Demon LaFour? The librarian from Bismarck said, quote, citizens should have the freedom to choose the information they want to access. In the case of minors, parents are responsible for this, not the government, end quote. Isn't that the argument that this Nazi wannabe Ron DeSantis, the governor of Florida, isn't he always talking about, well, now parents have got to be the ones to make this decision, except I don't trust the parents, so I'm going to make the decision. Now they're doing the same thing in North Dakota. North Dakota? A state that abuts Canada, where no such legislation would ever pass. Right? Canadian listeners? Jesus, I hope I'm right on that. The House bill, the one being offered by the majority leader, Mike LaFour, the Christian fascist, the House bill states that, quote, any individual who believes a public library is maintaining a book in violation may submit a written request to the public library to remove the book from its inventory. And the library shall remove the book requested for removal within 30 days of receiving the request. End quote. An individual who believes, just believes, the library is maintaining a book that is just believes it. Who needs proof? I believe it's sexually explicit. I believe it's in violation of the law. The bill does not include any provision for the librarian to review or reject the request from the apparent asshole who's standing there saying, I find that book in violation. Get it out. And the librarian, according to this bill, is required to do it then, now, immediately. No review, no rejection. Do it! Or go to jail. Go to jail. Pay a fine. The ACLU of North Dakota says, quote, one person then can essentially tell an entire community what they have access to at their public library based on that person's opinion or religious viewpoint. Yeah, well, this is the prime directive of Christian terrorism, Christian fascism. Remove everything that I, as a born again in the blood, find objectionable. Get rid of it. Hi, Truth Seekers. Mike Malloy here. You know, the Progressive Voices Network brings you commercial-free commentary from today's leading progressive radio hosts and pundits, like me, Mike Malloy, 24 hours a day. I'm not your typical old guy from the 80s or the 90s talk radio host, and Progressive Voices is not your typical talk radio network. It's a listener-supported nonprofit with no corporate control whatsoever over our broadcast. So hosts like me, Mike Malloy, are free to rant and scream and carry on about whatever we like. We're often controversial, but we're never boring. Weeknights, 9 p.m. in the East, 6 p.m. in the West on the Progressive Voices Network. Always progressive, always on. I'm Mike Malloy. Keep it lit.